Wonderful. Okay, so my presentation today is supposed to be about an Eclipse IDE for Uniface. And it is about that. About half the people in the room are using our software, so I'm going to assume the other half need to learn about it. So let me just start with the basics, what our software does, and I'll get through that as quickly as I can and then into the IDE, because I'm sure that's the part that most of you are really wanting to know about. Yeah? Okay, I will take questions at the end, because right at the end is lunchtime. So maybe if there are a lot of questions, people who are not so interested can get to the front of the queue, but rather than stopping in the middle. Is that okay? Awesome. There we have an agenda. March Hare Software, look, it's a fancy name for just a bunch of guys. Really, we were contractors in Sydney working with Uniface, and we kind of got together, used a company name to advertise what we did, and then when there wasn't quite so much consulting around anymore, we'd written all this software to help us be more productive as programmers. And we decided to put them up on this interweb network thing and see if any other Uniface people would find these tools helpful. And we found, lots of guys also found had the same problems and were looking for solutions. These days we are a products company. We don't do consulting anymore at all. We only do products. We've got offices in Sydney, London, and New York, out on Long Island. And for Europe, Udo is the go-to guy. For Northern Europe, it's Udo. For Southern Europe, it's Carles. So what is UD6? Okay, I keep talking, and why do our customers find it useful? Uniface in the world of development tools is that little bit different. In that it's wonderfully productive and a great tool for all of us to use, but it stores its source code in a database. So how many people here store their source code in Oracle? Yep. How many in Sybase or SQL Server? Yep. So that sort of thing. That makes it really hard to do some things. If you're familiar with tools that work with your source code in text files, such as Subversion, we just had a presentation about that by one of our customers, which was awesome. Pity he didn't, a few people told me in the break, pity he didn't get to the interesting bit. Saved me having to talk too much about the basics, yeah? Once your source code is in text files, that's what our product does, UD6. It puts your Uniface source code in text files. UD6 is a database just like Oracle, just like Sybase, but you don't use it for your application data. You use it for your source code repository. And what you end up with is something that looks like that, a directory full of text files. Okay? Those text files are your database. If you change one of those text files and look in Uniface, you'll find the content of your proc changed. If you change something in Uniface and look at the files have changed. That's what that is, okay? It's not terribly helpful on its own. The point is so that you can use standard productivity tools for developers, such as build management systems, version control systems, continuous integration, release management, quality control, and do agile development. How do you use, once your source code is in text files, each developer can have his own set of your Uniface repository on his local C drive and work in a distributed fashion. Or, if you like how Uniface currently works, with all of your team working together, then you can also do that. You just stick those text files on a shared drive, and it works exactly like what Uniface does right now. As we saw in that presentation earlier, if you put an access control list on those text files to prevent somebody changing it, then they can't change it. If you unlock it so that people can make changes, they can. So it's very, very flexible way of working. Our customers have gone even further with it though, and use these text files as the basis for other productivity enhancements. DHL have written this code analysis tool. Okay, so every local proc you can click on, it's hyperlinked and take you through the code. They have a lot of developers who don't have time to learn Uniface per se. They've been hired for other things, but then suddenly there's a whole bunch of Uniface work to do. They can't be cross-trained right now, but anyone can use this tool to quickly navigate the Uniface source code. Carphone Warehouse, another company, they outsource a lot of their development, and so they needed to be able to have a copy of the source code for the people working in outsourced locations. And so who's heard of a Microsoft help file? A CHM file? Yep, a couple of people know what I'm talking about. It's just a big documentation library. So they take those source code files and then pretty them up like this and put them in a documentation library. So it's just one big fat file and you can search the entire thing. So I was just talking to them the other day and they said it makes searching for debug statements really easy. If anybody's left a debug statement anywhere in their code, one quick search, if they're doing a release, one quick search, they know if there's a debug anywhere that it shouldn't be. Continuous integration. So this ability to make changes to your source code and then have it built in a stable environment, then deployed out to test production. This one's using Jenkins, another customer is using Bamboo. If you're familiar with these standard developer productivity tools, Uniface is an incredibly productive development environment. But the 3GL guys have been catching up a little bit by making really useful developer tools. Continuous integration, version control, change management, agile. So why not take those on board and Uniface just gets even more productive? Yeah? Okay, so why another IDE? Why another editor for Uniface? This is a new thing for us. Why should we do it? Who's here on the professional Uniface LinkedIn group? Not many. Okay, if LinkedIn, you know what LinkedIn is, social network for getting your resume out there, for business people. There is a Uniface subsection of that. You should definitely be on it because when people are looking for a new staff member, it's a very common place to go. And also CompuWare have been using it to ask some really interesting questions. So please join up to that. CompuWare are doing a new IDE with Uniface 10. I've had a couple of sneak peeks already and it's brilliant. So that's no reason for us to create an IDE. CompuWare are doing great work. They're working with their customers. They're asking questions. Why should we create an IDE ourselves? Because choice is a good thing. We had a conversation with CompuWare about a year ago, and they said that, look, they hadn't quite realized that if your source code is in text files, you could use any editor that you want, and they wanted to see a little mock-up. So we did a little mock-up, and then they encouraged us to continue with it. We've kind of kept touching base along the way, and Ard tells me, Adrian tells me, Martin tells me that they're finding that what we're doing is really interesting stuff. I love what they're doing with Uniface 10. They're quite different things, and choice is a good thing. I like Volvos, Udo likes BMWs. We don't want to have the same car necessarily, as we've got different needs. Yeah? So, specifically, reasons why you might need a different IDE are mostly to do with productivity. If you've got a lot of Java guys in your organization, or you need to be swapping backwards and forwards between different development environments, then if you're always struggling to remember, how do I do this in this tool? How do I do this in this tool? It's easier just to use one, okay? You make less mistakes. You might also have, who here is trying to implement an agile process for development? No, not big. It's not a big thing in the Uniface world right now, but it will be. Even CompuWare, I believe, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, are looking very seriously at Agile. I'm not getting any. Yes. Yes. I didn't want to be the one that said that. It's a very productive way to go, but having certain features integrated with the IDE then becomes very powerful, so that as you're coding you can tick off requirements. So it's about delivering requirements very, very quickly, and having that information fed back to the project managers and the sponsors very, very quickly. So if you're completing a feature today, you want the sponsor to know about it immediately, and so that they're getting that. That's what the whole Agile thing is partly about anyway. So there are reasons why you might need a different editor. We had to kind of reimagine things. So we're not just trying to reproduce the IDF here, we're trying to do things in a very Eclipse way of doing things, so that it's not necessarily familiar to a Uniface guy, it's familiar and comfortable for an Eclipse guy. Okay, so that if you've got Eclipse guys, you can bring them across and they can be productive much sooner. In particular, if you've ever opened up our source code in Notepad or something, it's not terribly readable. It's not unreadable, but it's not great. We don't want it to look like that. We want it to be like an IDE. One pane with all of your source code in there. We need to read the files. We need you to be able to edit the files. We need you to be able to change properties, all that declarative stuff in Uniface. We need something to handle the paint tableau for components. And then we need to be able to write these files out again in a way that the IDF is still going to be able to compile them. So we're not doing a compiler. That's not our job. We're just source code in text files, and then things that you can do once your source code is in text files. So this is not a markup. This is actually what it looks like running today. Smart navigation. So if you've got procs defined in a trigger, you can see them right there in the navigation tree. Refactoring, which I will demonstrate to you. This is a very powerful thing that Java developers take for granted, that you change the name of a local proc and it's changed throughout your application. So there's no sort of changing the entry and then changing each call, or there's no changing the variable name and then changing each place that variable's used. Just very quickly change it everywhere. Hinting. So just with a control space, you can't quite remember what that put mess, put list items, put list awk, put something. So just put control space and then you get the list. Yeah. Global search everywhere in your entire application. Find references. So you're looking at a proc and you want to know. You don't want to change everywhere that's used, but you want to know, oh, is this used in elsewhere in the component or just in this trigger? And we are not CompuWare, so we can't introduce new functionality into the IDF. So we need to do all of this with smarts in Eclipse. So in particular, we're not using like extended triggers or anything, any new features necessarily. If you're using them, they will come up. But if you just have your code in separate triggers at the moment, in execute, in local procs, in clear, in print, in add insert occurrence, these sorts of things, then you still get this singular view of all of your proc code in one place, but we're doing the smarts behind the scenes to make sure things end up where they're supposed to be. So, inheritance, obviously we have to handle. I'm going to demonstrate this Web Services Explorer, it'll make a lot more sense. Keyboard shortcuts. Bottom line, I've stolen this slide off Ard. Hopefully he's not too mad at me for it. Fantastic quote from Steve Jobs, that Apple, when they started out, IBM was spending a lot more on research and development than what they were. We can't outspend CompuWare on the development of a new IDE. We're only a very small company. I'm going to skip over that one. The demo I'm about to show you is 519 hours of work. So we've had 2 different people working on it, and a total amount of effort from absolutely nothing to what you're about to see is 519 hours of work. We're able to achieve a very lot from a very little because we're leveraging all of this development other people have done for us. Yeah? Here's the IDF, yeah? IDF 9.6. Nothing in here that you haven't seen before. There's a form component. All looking good? Yep. There's nothing here which is new, surprising, something to scare you all, okay? So I want to change this execute trigger, and I go in and I just type, and of course I can change. Oh, I can't change it, okay? Why can I not change it? We've got our source code in text files, and what I've done is I've put a little padlock icon on that particular file because I didn't want anybody to change it. There are different ways of working with your source codes. One way is that people have to reserve things before they make a change. Another way is that no, everyone just makes their changes. We had a great presentation on that earlier. I won't go into all the details, but that's practically how it works. Now that I've reserved it for my use, hello face to face, yeah? Save. It's now got a little orange marker on it to tell me that I changed that file. When I'm not connected to a network, the next screen takes a little while to come up. So just while that's thinking about it, here we go. So I can see a little side-by-side diff and instantly see my, my change there, yeah? So at the end of the day, I can just click on the directory and I can say, show me all my changes. I don't have to remember what form I have changed and what form I haven't. But enough of the IDF. Let's look at the Eclipse IDE. Now, who here has used Eclipse? About a third of the room, a bit less, maybe a quarter of the room. Okay, so there are different packages for Eclipse if you're using Java or C++ or all sorts of different languages. This is one that is just for Uniface. So it's not a perspective. You can't load it into the Java version of Eclipse. We might think of that for version 2, somewhere down the track, but not right now. There are reasons why. So I've got the model here. I can create new things, but I'm rapidly running out of time, so I'm going to stick to what I think are the critical things that you might want to see. So here we have a field definition, and I'm going to change the size of that. There we go. And I can save that. I can look at a component definition. Here are my local procs. I've got a few already defined in here. Again, we've been looking at different ways to show properties. This is one kind of way to show them. This is another way to show them. We're not entirely sure which way we'll go. We think probably this way with the grid widget, just because it's easier. So here I have a proc, and I can change this. I can't remember the syntax. Control space. Completion. Face to face. We don't have a lot of the syntax there in the moment. I will explain why in a moment. But there's a few things. But I go, oh, proc1. No, that's not what it should be called. I can just refactor it. And you see it changes everywhere at once.
Do you also support parameters which...
Yes. Yeah. Yep. It's just a matter of building out the syntax. Yep. And variables and global procs and the whole bit. It's like I have 1 minute left, so I have few things that I can quickly show. I can be here and say, well, you know, where is pick a bit more interesting one. No, maybe not. There's one there somewhere. Here we go. So, you know, there's a bit of text there, and can we make that a central message because it's used in several places? No, it's only used in one place. So there's no point in making that a central message. Last thing that I want to show you, if you're developing web services in Uniface or consuming web services from Uniface, thinking. Again, because I'm not connected to the network, it's just going to take a couple of seconds here to come up, I think.
I can ask a question.
Yep.
Do you still need the form editor from IDE?
The idea of the Eclipse IDE is that for most of what you would do on a day-to-day basis, you will not need to use the IDF. So for instance, we might not do uglyph, okay? Because you're probably not changing glyphs every day. But everything that you would do in a component or in the model, yeah, that will be in here. This is only 500 hours work. We've only been, we've been working on it for about a year, but obviously just a little bit here and there. We started off as a proof of concept, whereas we just announced in Las Vegas at the North American user group that this will definitely be a product. We have open sourced it, so we are hoping other people will get in and help define syntax and things that we have not done yet. We'll work on big areas such as the model editor, paint to blow, those sorts of things. We're hoping that other companies that maybe have a mix of Uniface Java developers will get on board and help fill out some of the areas. We've done the painting the big canvas, but some of the detail needs to be filled in. We will leave it as like that until the end of June 2014. After June 2014, we will look at what's been submitted, what we've written, what other people have written, clean it up, turn it into a product and release it. We're not going to make a promise about how long that will take us, but you know, we'll be working on it diligently. Very quickly, if I may, show you the Web Services Explorer. If you're either consuming or writing web services in Uniface, this means that you can test them as you go. So you just type in the URL for the WSDL, it instantly shows you the functions available, it gives you a way to submit the parameters. And test the service and get a result. You can look at it in text format, or you can actually look at the SOAP envelopes. So you can actually very quickly write a service in Uniface, test it in the Web Services Explorer, switch back, get into your code, recompile it, switch back, backwards and forwards. And when you're all done, and you switch back to the IDF, the IDF will just simply reread the file that you have been working on. And here are the changes that I made to the local prox trigger. So you're working with the IDF and the Eclipse editor side by side each other on the one repository. Thank you all very much for your time. We have a new website, the u.info. We have these pens with the presentation and the lightsaber and all the rest. Grab a pen from Udo Pot on your way out. Grab a brochure. If you want to talk to me over lunch or on our tour of the castle, I would love to speak with you.